As I sit here writing this, I can see the wall of pines at the end of my garden. The pines I have not stepped among since this day. The pines that hold secrets man isn't supposed to uncover. I grew up in this small stone house in the countryside of England. The pines at the bottom of my garden stretch on for over 500 square kilometers. It used to be my favorite place in the world. I had a good life, a simple one, up until this day. When I wasn't at school or at one of the many extracurricular activities my overbearing mother made me sign up to, I spent my time wandering in the woods. She had instructed me that I was allowed to go up to 10 trees deep into the forest. I had aspirations of becoming an entomologist when I grew up, and much to her disappointment, I spent the majority of my time collecting insects to add to my collection. The iridescent bellies of door beetles and the vibrant wings of monarch butterflies absorbed my attention fully, and on more than one occasion, I found myself far beyond the 10-tree limit. On such occasions, I would leap to my feet and sprint as fast as I could back to my garden, hoping to avoid the wrath my mother would bring down upon me if she had noticed that I was gone. On one such occasion, on an unseasonably muggy afternoon in April, I stumbled across the most interesting thing I had come across at that point in my life. I stood there in my cargo shorts and my favorite Pink Floyd t-shirt, looking up in awe. An ominous structure of wood and rusted metal shot 4 stories into the sky, as if it were a man's act of defiance towards the towering pines. The windows, dark and uninviting, their glass shattered years ago, stared down at me, beckoning me closer and screaming at me to leave all at the same time. I stood there, a mix of admiration and curiosity for the decaying hulk that stood before me. How had I not seen this while walking in the woods with my dad? I thought to myself. I couldn't have been more than 300 meters from my garden, could I? Those thoughts never brought upon the sense of danger or fear that they should have, and they quickly left my head as I continued to stare up at the monster that stood before me. Never in the 9 years of my life had I seen something that I wanted so badly to explore. I took a step towards a small sign that hung crooked on its rusted chain. The yellow of its letters were so faded, they were barely discernible from the red of the board they adorned. One word had been erased with the deep gouges of a knife or a nail, and below the word, Spore had been scratched in, changing the sign to read, "Welcome to the Spore Mill." At my young age, I did not know what Spore meant, and nor did I care. This was the most interesting thing I had found all year. I took another step towards the rotting mill, pausing to take in all of its details. Somebody had wired together rusted ripsaw blades, nails, and other unidentifiable shards of corroding steel, as if to construct makeshift wind chimes. They hung them from the empty frames, swinging gently in the warm breeze. Circles, triangles, and lines had intersected to make strange patterns adorn the walls around every window and door frame. 3 large circles of scorched earth formed the points of the triangle, all equidistant from a large rusted saw table in the middle. A picnic table sat near the caved-in roller door, and I imagined the men who used to work here sitting around it, laughing while eating their packed lunches, the scent of freshly sawn timber heavy in their nostrils. I stood for a while, taking everything in with that sense of childlike wonder and innocence you lose as you get older. Just as I thought of my mother's face wild with anger, and the threat of not being allowed into the woods again for at least a week crept up on me. It was then that I heard something that would change the course of my life from there on out. A tiny pathetic mew drifted down from the 2nd floor, the type of noise you would expect from a week-old kitten. This cemented the idea in my head. I was going in and nothing could stop me. To hell with what my mother would think. I was going in. I was 9 and I was able to look after myself. Or so I thought. Ignoring the creeping fear of what could lie in the dim interior, I crept up to the band and pushed it open. With a creak, it swung unsteadily on its hinges and let the light filtering through the canopy spill inside, illuminating the dust that hung in the musty air. I stepped through onto ancient boards, which felt spongy and sticky beneath my feet. The years had not been kind to man's attempt of claiming this part of nature. The undergrowth reached right up to the back sides of the building, spewing tendrils of sickly green onto the floor and ceiling, the vines thicker and more fleshy than I had ever seen before. Through cracks in the floor grew nettles, stems as thick as trunks and leaves big enough for you to see the needle-like stinging cells that adorn their undersides. Everything in this place had me captivated. Everywhere I looked, I saw something that amazed me. Upon further inspection of the floor, I discovered that the stickiness that I had noticed before was a microscopic ocean of fungus and mushrooms that covered the floor as far as I could see. With each step, the little pots and caps burst to ooze out a thick, treacle-like liquid onto the floor and shoot a tiny spire of spores into the air. I felt like an explorer on an alien planet, the first man to discover a new world of luscious flora. I couldn't wait to tell people about this place. My attention was suddenly pulled from my surroundings when I heard them meow again. I made my way across the workshop to the staircase, remembering why I was there. I was going to save those kittens. My boots found the first step and I started my ascent. With each step I took into the murky stairwell, the more uneasy that I felt. "You're being stupid," I thought to myself. "There's nothing scary here, monsters are real, and you're the only person." I continued upstairs until I came to a corner in the stairs. The darkness seemed to spill out around the corner and cascade down each step like a foul liquid that I didn't want to touch. I stopped. I had two options: turn back and go home, and leave the kittens here to die on their own, or stop being such a baby and being scared of the dark. The choice seemed pretty obvious to me at the time. I could never live with myself if I didn't do anything to help. I steadied myself on the handrail and I rounded the bend on the stairs. I would have screamed if not for the fact the shock of what lay before me locked every ounce of air inside my lungs. Inches from my face lay a tangled mass of yellow teeth, matted fur, and dirty exposed bone. I stumbled back in horror from the nightmare creature that lay there, staring through me with its glazed, milky eyes. I inhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes and I was hit with a stench to rival anything I had ever smelt before. Sickly sweet and heavy, the smell of putrid rot smacked into me with the force of a train almost making me vomit. I turned to run, ready to leave this place and everything inside behind forever, as I realized that the thing before me hadn't moved or made a single sound since my discovery. Hesitantly, I took another look, and I almost laughed at my own initial reaction to the creature as I regained control of my brain. A large fox, lying on its side of the staircase, almost liquefied by decay, and the creature's ribs protruded through its chest, lips pulled back into a vicious snarl, eyes sunk deep in fur wet with its own viscid remains. As my heart slowed back to a normal pace, I felt a deep sadness for this once beautiful woodland creature. Nobody should be left somewhere like this when they die, I thought, and I resolved to come back later to bury it once I had completed my mission. Stepping over the fox, I rounded the stairs once more to the second floor. I stood as quietly as I could, listening for the meow that had beckoned me here in the first place. Again, I heard that pitiful sound. A doorway to a small room lay in the wall at the back of the workshop. I made my way towards it. The musty smell was stronger up here, but I soldiered on. Nothing would stop me from getting to those kittens. I made my way through the maze of workbenches, rusted machines, and piles of mold-blackened wood, getting ever closer to the noise, until I was stood in the doorway. Tucked under a bench in the corner, I saw them. Not kittens, but kits. 4 little baby foxes, entwined with each other in a small wooden box, wriggling, mewing, and chirping, trying in vain to get their mother's attention. Their mother, I assumed, who was lying in the stairwell, never to care for her kits again. I knelt down and I pulled the box towards me, wanting a closer look at these beautiful little foxes. Except when I pulled them closer, my heart sank in my chest, and the back of my neck grew hot. They weren't beautiful. There was something wrong with these animals, or more accurately, animal. The closer I looked, the more tears welled up in my eyes. Never before, never since had I felt what I felt looking at that thing in the box. A feeling you can only describe as a mixture of primal fear, revulsion, and sorrow. A feeling only brought upon by seeing something you aren't meant to see. Seeing something that just shouldn't exist. Their limbs too long, easily twice as long as I expected a baby fox's legs to be, each with one too many joints. The legs twitched and shuddered with each tiny movement. The fur was wet and missing in patches. In place of the fur were clusters of small boils and bumps, some of which were leaking yellowish white pus, matting the few hairs that remained. Where each kid touched one another, there was no separation, only taut skin that grew into one another, making the writhing pile of legs, boils, and emanated rib cages into one awful being. The heads turned towards me in unison on necks 3 inches longer than they should be. To my horror, I witnessed staring, visionless eyes too far apart, milky and crusted along the edges. There were no tongue nor teeth in those little mouths. All I saw was more clusters of boils and sleeping wounds. And that noise, that god-awful noise, emanating from all the mouths at once, now sounding so unnatural and artificial like a synthetic mimicry, each a millisecond out of sync with the next. That noise has stayed with me forever. This was all too much to handle for my 9-year-old brain. I lost my balance and I fell backwards, catching my ankles on a small nail protruding from the fungus-infested boards. Using my feet to push myself away, I scurried back towards the doorway, frantically trying to wipe the oily black liquid from the mushrooms that now covered my legs. There was something deeply wrong with all of this and I needed an adult. I scrambled to my feet, taking off across the workshop to the staircase when I heard it. A noise that stopped me dead in my tracks. A heavy, sickening click coming from the staircase I was headed towards. A click, like the sound my beetle's feet made on the glass floor of the terrarium, but 1,000 times louder. A click that instilled a sense of primal terror in me, one that my lizard brain understood, but I didn't. Ducking behind a rusty saw table, I waited, shaking with tears now flowing freely. I didn't know what was in that staircase, but it dawned on me that I was only 9 years old, in an abandoned mill in the middle of the woods, with a box brimming with horror that threatened to sway my mind from the plane of sanity. I did not want to find out what was in that stairwell. I decided. My breath ragged in my throat and sweat soaking into my shirt. I listened, waiting, praying and hoping for it to go away. A small voice in the back of my mind piped up, telling me that it was probably my father's boots on the stairs, that he was looking for me when he realized I wasn't within the 10-tree limit. Except boots don't click. Do they? I screamed at myself. As that terrible clicking drew closer, the air grew muggier, warmer, thicker. The particles floating in the beams of light became denser the closer it got. With each click, the fungus that covered everything in this hellscape that I was now a part of puffed and oozed, as if each click was an invitation to throw their abhorrent cells into the air. That noise that I had heard so many times from my beetle's feet, that noise that had comforted me, intrigued me, and became an everyday part of my life, was within meters of me when I felt my breath clog in my throat and my vision cloud. The air around me like a soup of spores and dust. I could taste them on my tongue, feel them settling on my skin. A different click, this time, now one produced by a hard carapace making contact with the floor. Whatever it was, it stopped moving, and now a deep, wet burst of clicks emanated from the other side of the workbench, followed by 2 strangely gentle puffs of air, much like the sound a deer makes when sniffing your hand. The sound reminded me of a documentary I had watched with my dad a few weeks before, one about killer whales. I had learned how they hunted, how they used short bursts of sound to locate their prey. It dawned on me then, I was a mere seal in the open ocean, just waiting to be found. Panic consumed me and pinpricks of black swirled in my mind's eye. I was losing consciousness. Whatever this thing bearing down upon me was, it was nearly here. I didn't want to die. I want to go home. I want to go home. I just want to go home. I cried to myself, too terrified to make a sound. I didn't want to make it any easier for the creature to find me. Images of the rotten fox popped up into my mind, and I realized then that I awaited the same fate as that poor creature, liquefying into the floor, and becoming more food for the terrible, foul things that inhabited this place. The bench groaned and shuddered at the weight of the creature as it hauled itself onto it, its breath hot and rancid, each exhale causing the thick veil of spores to dance in front of me. "Get away, get away, get away!" I moaned, tears falling and cutting lines in the thick black dust that stuck to my sweat. More of the organic clicks, so loud that I could feel them in my chest. A heavy blast of air down the back of my neck. With that breath gushed billions more spores, all tunneling into my nose, ears, and mouth, choking me as they hit the back of my throat. And with that, I was out. I awoke 4 days later to the beeping of monitors, the driest throat that I'd ever had, and a deep throbbing ache in my knee. I saw my mother leap to her feet and cry for the nurse the second I opened my eyes. I started to panic at the needles, noises, and the swarm of people in blue that rushed towards me. The next few weeks went by in a blur of color, sound, and reporters gathering outside of the hospital. I later found out that I had been discovered by a man walking his dog along a trail 7 kilometers from my house. I was naked and covered in a viscous, black mucus-like substance. He had called the emergency services, and I was rushed to a hospital where I was treated for severe respiratory problems due to a seemingly impossible amount of particles in my lungs, and where I had my left leg removed just below my knee, where the flesh was necrotic, following a rapidly spreading infection from a small cut. The national news and all the papers dubbed me as the boy that survived. Not very catchy if you ask me. They never uncovered why or how I managed to get to where I was in the woods, or what caused the infection in my leg. The building was never discovered. In my ramblings about the mill, the foxes and noises that emanated from the creature on the second floor, they were all dismissed as hallucinations of a delirious child. They said that I had fallen into a bog and I walked for miles, soaking wet, and caught all of these things from that. There are no bogs in that forest. I know what really happened. I know what took my leg, what took the chance of being a normal teenager from me. This was all 16 years ago. I have an amazing prosthetic leg, which I can walk, run, and jump on now. My asthma has cleared up enough that I don't need my inhaler, and I'm way past the age that my mother can forbid me from going into the woods. Life is good again, for the most part. The problem is, I can still feel that which lies in the depths of my lungs. I have moved back to my childhood home. Late at night, I can hear a gentle meowing from the tree line, occasionally followed by a burst of wet clicks. I have a lighter in my pocket, and 2 cans of gasoline in the garage. Since I was found on that hiking trail, 6 children have gone missing in the woods my house backed onto. There will not be a 7th.